And what I discovered was we've actually got a 4-part machine between our ears whose job is to drive our life.
Right.
And it's designed biologically to make us survive and thrive.
Right.
Now, we all know the survive part, but we forget the thrive part. The thrive part means you being the best you can be. That means being happy, because you being happy is when you are your best. It's when you're most resourceful, creative, you contribute the most to society and to yourself. It's when you're feeling good. It's not when you're feeling depressed and weighed down with stress and problems.
Right.
So this all led me to really understand that the brain is the key to, our brain is the key to everything.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. This is Audley Stevenson, and you've got it locked to the Audacious Living Podcast. This is the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer, hands down, no doubt about that. And I really appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the handle The Audacious Pod. And if you happen to be watching this episode on YouTube, then you know you can tap the bell down below and stay connected by subscribing to the channel. Now, on this episode, we'll be talking about the human brain, and the human brain is arguably the most important organ in the body. It controls and coordinates and actions and reactions and allows us to think, feel, and enables us to have memories and feelings. All of these things, of course, make us human. Our guest on today's episode of the podcast is Naden, and he's done a lot of work and research in the area of the brain. And his findings have led to him to conclude that the brain is by far the most powerful computer that exists on the planet. Liam is a researcher, speaker, and author who, through his own personal experiences, come to understand and appreciate the incredible power contained in our heads and how they are designed to biologically to make us survive and thrive, and really, you know, it brings us so much happiness, and they're designed to bring us happiness and joy. And so it's really an eye-opening conversation, so much great stuff, and I walked away with some powerful insights, and I'm certain that you absolutely will too. So without any further delay, I would say check out my conversation with Naden. Enjoy. Hey, Liam, thank you for being here and joining me on the Audacious Living Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Audley. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes,
looking forward to it.
I always enjoy having dialogues of this nature from a self-improvement standpoint, you know, how we can do things better, how we can be more efficient, how we can be more productive. And I think it's really up your alley when you talk about how we can use our brain. You know, our brain power guides all of what we want to do, and yeah, it leads to our successes and our greatest achievements and all these sorts of things. And so I think this is perfect opportunity for us to chat about the power of our brain, more specifically, and I think I've heard you say a few times, using it the right way.
Yep, for sure.
Now, actually, so I want to jump in the brain, but maybe I want to kind of go back and maybe get you to talk about how you landed where you're at now in this field, this area, and why you felt it was so important to focus on the power of the brain.
Sure, okay. Well, something happened to me in my mid-40s that should never have happened. And that is, I went from being a multi-millionaire to losing everything and becoming homeless. You know, I had to move back in with my elderly mother, who was in her 70s. I had to sleep on the sofa in the living room in her small apartment. And it's like, the reason that should never have happened to me is because I had studied success pretty well all my life. And I tried everything from religion, I was brought up a Christian, and I was taught that if you want to be happy and successful, you pray to God and God will give you what you want.
Right.
I tried that. I'd had my own businesses all through my life. I've been told if you want to be happy, get your own business and make lots of money. I did all of that. I did all of the personal development stuff. I went to seminars all over the world. I did courses, read the books, had all the tapes in those days, and studied all the stuff from, motivation to goal setting to how to change your thoughts, how to rewire your brain, how to reprogram your thoughts. Right. Doing affirmations, carrying a little card around, this is all this sort of stuff. And so I did all the spirituality stuff as well, meditation, different practices and all sorts of things.
You've covered all the bases there.
Yeah. So when I lost everything, I thought, how could this happen to me?
Right.
I know how to be in control of my life. I know how to set goals and achieve them. And here I am. Not only is this completely shouldn't have happened, but I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I have no clue how to get out of this mess, which it was. So anyway, my life I got through that operation, all the drama, and things got better, but things got a lot better. And I was finding that instead of before, when I'd been struggling to achieve success, writing down all my goals and struggling to achieve them and fighting with all of these problems and overcoming adversity and having all challenges to overcome all the time on this ladder of success, things were quite different because I was making plenty of money again, but I was doing things I really enjoyed, and opportunities were coming to me. I was coming up with better ideas of things to do. People were showing up in my life and giving me opportunities. Business ideas came along. And the same in my personal life. People were showing up who are a lot healthier for me. I formed a new relationship with somebody which wasn't filled with drama and stress. It was absolutely perfect for me.
Right.
And I was starting to do all of the things that I really enjoyed. And one day I thought, hang on, what's different here? Why don't I have all the problems and stress that I used to have in building success? Because I not only feel successful, I actually feel really happy. And I'm not waking up in the mornings dreading what's in my inbox, in my email, thinking, and going to sleep at night worrying about all the problems I've got to have to try and figure out how to fix the next day. It really wasn't like that. And I thought I really need to figure out what I'm doing differently, because I've got to make sure I keep doing it. I don't want to mess this up. So I need to find out what is it that I'm doing differently.
Right.
And when I started, because I had a lot of knowledge in all of those different fields, I could start to draw things together and look at things in a different way. And what I discovered was we've actually got a 4-part machine between our ears whose job is to drive our life.
Right. And
it's designed biologically to make us survive and thrive.
Right.
Now, we all know the survive part, but we forget the thrive part. The thrive part means you being the best you can be. That means being happy, because you being happy is when you are your best. It's when you're most resourceful, creative, you contribute the most to society and to yourself. It's when you're feeling good. It's not when you're feeling depressed and weighed down with stress and problems.
Right.
So this all led me to really understand that our brain is the key to everything. It's because it is, as I said, biologically designed to make you thrive. Its sole function is to make you happy. So if you're not happy, you've got to say, what's going wrong here? Well, imagine if you have a motor car. Here's a good analogy.
Okay.
Now we all know what a motor car is. It's a machine that's designed to get you from where you are to where you want to go.
Right.
And it will do it in a predictable way. It'll be comfortable.
Yep.
It'll be guaranteed that you'll do that. But you have to know how to drive it. You can't just get into that car and hope, pray, feel motivated, feel excited, whatever it is. You've got to figure out what all those buttons are and what the levers are, and you have to drive it the right way.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't dream actually getting into a car and trying to drive it if you hadn't been taught how to drive it, if you didn't know how.
Right.
You'd say, well, I don't know how to drive this. I know what it's supposed to do, and I know it will do it, but I need to learn how to drive it. And it turns out our brain is just a machine as well. It's got 4 parts.
Okay.
But who's ever taught us how to drive it? And yet we all expect that it's going to take us to where we want to go. But it's, again, with a motor car, if you don't use it the right way, say you're trying to figure out there's a lever here, and you don't know it's the handbrake. So you leave that on and you're pushing down the accelerator hard, and the engine's making all sorts of noises and the thing's jumping all over the place. And you're saying, oops, I've got problems here. Problems are what show up when you use a machine the wrong way. That's what they are. So it makes sense. If you use your brain, which is designed biologically to make sure that you have the best life possible, which means without stress and problems, because that's not your best life when you're feeling that. So if you knew that, if problems show up, you've got to start asking yourself, as I did, isn't this just a sign that I'm using this machine the wrong way? Isn't that what problems are?
Right.
And it turns out on a biological level, that's exactly right with your brain.
Got you. Leo, I actually want, so thank you for that sort of explanation, if you will. I want to go back and to when you were sort of at your lower point, trying to figure out what was going on. When did you make the connection that, it was, you had to focus on, the machine inside of our heads?
It wasn't until much later. I didn't know what I was doing differently at the time to get me in a new direction. But when I sort of back engineered based on all this research that I did into how the brain works, I thought, I can see what I'm doing differently and what I've started to do differently. But like most people, or well, anybody who happens to stumble on using something the right way, it was a bit of a fluke accident, or it wasn't something, I didn't sit down and write a book or study all this in advance and say, aha, I know how to use it right, that's what I'm going to do. It happened the other way around. Because I was actually doing it before I understood what I was doing.
Right. Yeah. So you're able to put a label on it after the fact.
Yeah, it was really understanding the process of how the machine works, and I could say, yes, that's what I've been doing differently to what I'd been doing previously to create all the mess that I'd got into, if you like, and to create all the stress and problems that I had.
Well, and I very much, like I use the analogy of the automobile and not knowing, if we don't know how to, I think it's a great analogy, because if you don't know how to use it properly, it can lead to problems. And so if we think of our brains in the same capacity, I do think it's an effective way of understanding what our emphasis or what our focus should be. And it really should be about understanding, how to effectively use those 4 parts of the brain. You refer to the 4 parts. I got to ask you to maybe break that down for us to understand what these parts are and how they work in synchronicity with one another.
Sure. Yeah, great. Okay. Obviously this is can be quite a complex subject, and it's full of scientific terms, neuroscience and all that sort of stuff. So what I've really done is... Please be gentle with us. Well, I've created a model which really simplifies it and makes it a lot clearer, because just like that analogy with an automobile, a car. You don't need to know what the name of every single wire and bit of metal is in your engine to be able to use it the right way. You just need to know the concepts or the basics, if you like. And then the machine actually does the work for you. You're not getting out and pushing the car. And unfortunately, this is what a lot of people do in their life, is they get in the car of their life, don't know how to drive it, and think, well, maybe what I need to do is get out and push. So they put in a huge amount of effort trying to push their car of their life along. And all that happens is they get exhausted and they don't, and nothing much happens, but they have a lot of struggle. And then they say to themselves, well, I need to be stronger. I need to put in more effort. I need to be more motivated. I need to, overcome this. And they push even harder. But as we know, that doesn't work. And it's the same with your brain. So just to explain how the brain works, and I think just before I explain the 4 parts, something that is really, really important to know that very few people know, which is surprising, and I didn't know it, which was surprising to me, is just how powerful your brain is.
Okay.
I mean, there have been books written about the power of the brain, but it is far and away the most powerful computer, if you like, that exists on the planet, probably in the universe, for all we know. And many people have described it as such. There's an experiment done a few years ago, and they took one of the world's largest, most powerful supercomputers. This was in Japan.
Okay.
And it spent did some work to do what the human brain does in 1 second. So it mimicked the neural activity, the activity of the brain, for 1 second. It took this computer 40 minutes to do what our brain does in 1 second.
Wow.
So our brain is just massively more powerful than we realize. And in fact, if we did realize it, the only thing we'd want to do in our life is figure out how to use it, because it literally has the power to do what it's designed to do, which is to bring you everything you need in your life to have a great, happy life. And that includes bringing to you good ideas, good situations, good opportunities. It brings you the right people, brings you the right circumstances and situations, those things we call luck and coincidence.
Right.
This is all the work of this particular part of the brain. It's one part of the brain which I'll explain. So I think it's really important to know that your brain is just far more powerful than you realize, and it literally has the answer. It not only has the answer to every question you might ask, but it knows more about you than you do, than you think you do. It knows what you want. You know, oftentimes we're busy writing down goals and trying to figure out what we want and go after what we think we want, but our brain actually knows what we want, really want. And that's probably what we don't know about. So there's 4 parts to the brain. This is how it works, okay? The first part is what I call the thinking brain, the thinking part of your brain. And that's on the top of your head. And this is the part that gathers all of the information that comes at you from your environment in every second of your life. So it's everything that you get through your senses, everything you hear, smell, taste, touch, and feel, and also all of your thoughts, all of your experiences. They come into your brain and they're stored in this part of the brain, the thinking brain. This is where we think from, our thoughts. That's the first part. The second part is our feeling brain, or our emotional brain. And this is located just below the thinking part of your brain. And this is what gives you feelings, as it suggests. So it makes you feel either, it releases chemicals actually that can make you either feel happy, grateful, loving, all those things, or stressed, afraid, worried, the other end. That's all controlled by the feeling, emotional brain. The third part of your brain is in the back of your head, and it's called your survival brain. And this part of the brain controls everything to keep you alive, basically. And it does most of it, it does all of it automatically without thinking, because it's not the thinking brain. So this is things like your heartbeat, you know, your breathing, all of the organs in your body that keep you going physically. But it has one other very important function to play in your survival, and that is to protect you whenever, on the odd occasion, something threatening to you shows up in your environment. So an immediate danger, something that could kill you or harm you immediately. So the old story is, you know, the lion comes out at you in the forest in prehistoric times, and your brain, recognizing that danger, that it's an immediate threat to you, it switches you into this state called your fight, flight, freeze. You've probably heard that. This automatic survival response to deal with this danger. And that's really important, and I'll explain why a bit later, how that's the part that people use the wrong way, and that's what gives them all their problems. Because the fourth part of your brain, which science has more recently discovered and is starting to understand how this works, or where it works in your brain actually, because it always has worked. That's the creative brain. And this is the part of your brain that's responsible for your creativity, your imagination, your resourcefulness. It's where you get gut feelings from and new ideas. You know, you get a new idea and say, wow, I never thought of that before. We think, hey, there's a better way to do that. Or, oops, I better not do it that way. No, that's a bad decision. Now, this isn't any of your, this, as you know, this doesn't come from your thoughts. It comes from somewhere else. It's like a gut feeling or an inspiration. And it's also the part of your brain, the creative part, which controls, as I said, the people that show up in your life, the circumstances when it's good, the coincidences, the synchronicities. Because on a lower level of awareness, we think, oh, that's just luck. You know, that's just something out of the blue. But when you really understand the power of your brain, you understand how this world works together, you realize there's no coincidences, there's nothing random. The universe couldn't survive if it was all random. Quantum physics explains why this is. So this is your creative brain. And here's the thing. So this is the part that's all the good stuff, you know. And when you're surviving and thriving, when you're thriving, this is the part of your brain that's driving your life. And this is the part of the brain that's supposed to drive your life, because it's the part that goes, I know what you want, to be happy and successful. And you being happy, feeling good, is you being at your best, means you're thriving. You're best able to contribute to society for the survival of the species and do what you're here to do.
Right.
So that's supposed to be running the show most of the time. And of course, there's been words to describe it. People talk about being in the flow or in the zone.
Yes.
Those sorts of things. It's when you're feeling really good and things are working for you and you're coming up with good ideas and everything's just falling into place. You're still putting in effort, but it's not a struggle. It's pleasurable effort. And you're feeling loving, grateful, all of those things. So that's the way we're supposed to live most of the time.
Right.
There's only one time we're not supposed to live like that. And that's when you're feeling good, the lion comes running out of the jungle at you, the forest. And then your brain goes, there's a danger, switch into this survival state to deal with that immediate danger. So that's when your brain automatically goes, whoops, run away or stand and fight or shout out for help or do something.
Yes. Right.
So that's like a reaction, a quick function that's supposed to get rid of that danger. And then your brain says, right, everything's good, go back to being in your creative state, having a good time, enjoying yourself.
Right.
But here's the trick. The problem is what happens when you snap into this fear state or the survival state to fight an immediate danger. The brain is designed to make sure that's all you use it for. That's an immediate threat to your survival.
Right.
Go into the state, get rid of it, get back to being happy.
Right.
Because what the brain actually does in that state is that it takes all of the resources from your body and the rest of your brain that are useful to fighting off an attacker and uses it for that. And it literally shuts down or blocks off any part of your brain that is not helpful for that. So if the lion's running at you from the forest, it's not helpful to be creative, to be imaginative, to be resourceful, to be grateful, to be happy, to look at all the nice trees in the forest around you.
No time.
It can't do that. It has to get you focusing on the negative and the immediate threat. And all of that stuff is blocked off literally from your brain. So what's the problem here? Most people are living in this state most of the time. They've trained their brain to say you're faced with an immediate danger, because the sign that your brain thinks you're faced with an immediate danger is when you feel fear, when you feel stress, worry, anxiety. When you feel fear, stress, worry, or anxiety, you literally got your brain in this survival state, and you've blocked off all of these creative resources that are going to help you to create your ideal life. So the irony of it is you're trying to solve a problem in this state, and you've blocked off the part of your brain that can solve the problem.
Right.
All of your problem solving resources, all of your ability to see what you should be doing in your life, all of the ability to make the right decisions, you're blocking all that off. And this is why people are struggling. It's why I was struggling, trying to figure it out, trying to work things out, really trying to overcome it, being frustrated, not realizing that fear or anxiety and worry were literally on a biological level blocking me from having the resources to be able to do everything I thought I wanted to do.
Got you.
And this is why this is how using your brain the wrong way is trying to solve your problems or trying to create your ideal life and using the brain, which is only focused on your immediate survival from a danger.
I understand.
This doesn't work.
So it's the equivalent of, you have a hammer, but you need a screwdriver. You're using the wrong tool. In the same way, you're using the wrong part of your brain to accomplish what you're after in that moment. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Fair example?
Exactly. Or it's a bit like one foot on the accelerator and the other foot on the brake, both fall down hard, not going anywhere, and wondering why it's not working.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is what I was led to after trying all these things. All my research brought me to this is how your brain works on a physical, biological level.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how motivated you are, doesn't matter how much knowledge you get on setting goals or doing any of these things. If your brain has all the knowledge you need, but you can't access it if you're in a fear, anxiety state.
Got you. So the key then, Liam, in this is being able to flip that switch appropriately to get you to do what needs to be done. So I guess the natural question is, what does that process of flipping the switch look like?
Well, there's only three things you need to do. Only, when I say only,
yeah.
there's three things. I actually have a coaching program and I teach these three things.
Okay.
The first thing I think that's really important is you need to understand how your brain works. And I've given the mini version because it's a bit like with a car. When you say, I know how this car works. There's no way I'd use it any other way.
Right.
Now that I understand how it works, so now I understand how my brain works, there's no way I would use it any other way. I would not try and solve any of my problems or create my ideal life when I'm feeling worried, stressed, or afraid. I know it wouldn't work. So it's really important to understand that, on a mechanical, biological level. And when you understand that, you realize that the enemy is fear. The enemy is feeling bad.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how justified you feel. It's a bit like someone gives you a glass of hydrochloric acid and says, drink this and I'll give you $1 million. You go, but that'll kill me. It'll harm me. Why would I drink that? Well, I'll give you $10 million and anything you want. No. Sorry, you don't understand. I understand what that would do to me.
Right.
So it's the same with worry, stress, and anxiety. When you understand that it puts your brain in the wrong state for creating your life and really giving you any hope of overcoming what you think are your problems.
Right.
When you understand that, you say fear is the enemy. I've got to find out a way to stop being afraid or stop feeling bad.
Right.
So that's the next step up, is you've got to ask yourself, what am I allowing into my thoughts, into my brain, into my environment that are making me feel bad? I've got to stop it. It's just,
right.
doesn't matter how justified I feel. That means switching off that news story about how bad things are. Because you might think, people say to me, well, I have to stay informed. You've got to stay in touch.
Sure.
What is informed mean? I've never watched the mainstream news for decades. My life's never been better as a result. And I'm still functioning perfectly happily. Thank you very much.
Right.
So what are you watching? What are you listening to? Is it a conversation with somebody? Are you getting into negative conversations? Are you dealing with negative people? And when you realize that whatever it is, you've got to try and find a way of blocking it out, or at least minimizing it, because it's like drinking hydrochloric acid. Doesn't,
right.
if everyone else is drinking it, doesn't mean you should.
No, it doesn't. But I do very much like the point around the things that we feed ourselves. Because I think oftentimes what will happen is we're subconsciously feeding these things on. So, it's not uncommon. Maybe you've got the news on in the background while you're doing something else. So you're hearing what's happening, and that's being fed into your brain unaware. You're unaware of it. Yeah. And that's what you're programming and not even know what's happening. And so I think by being, again, increasing our awareness to what we're feeding ourselves, we're able to sort of control what comes in and what comes out.
Absolutely. And why do we feed that stuff into our brain? Because we don't realize what it's doing to us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize the damage it's doing on a biological level to our future success. And we think, it doesn't really matter. And, everyone else is on it, and it's a good topic for conversation. And, we can all have a good moan about something, or, I can blame some alternative, something outside of me for my circumstance. I can blame the economy or, whatever it is. But we don't realize, no one's taught us that this is like drinking hydrochloric acid. It's, we're starting to be taught that what you feed your body, if it's wrong for you, you're going to end up with problems.
Right.
And when you realize that, you don't want to eat stuff that's going to make, damage your body. But we don't. But the idea that the nutrition you put into your brain on a physical level, from a physical perspective, is going to damage or help you. It's pretty new stuff. I mean, I find anyway, these concepts that I'm talking about, most people haven't really thought about it in this way.
Yeah,
it works.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I mean, because as you're talking, I'm even myself going, oh wow, like I've never viewed it that way. And and Liam, I'm naturally going, in my own life, where have I been, exhibiting this, and how has it impacted me unknowingly? So I think you raise a really, really, really good point around the influence or the power the brain does have over our lives, whether we realize it's happening or not. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I wanted to sort of talk about then, so bearing that in mind, how, when we talk about sort of overcoming challenging moments or obstacles or problems, bearing that, the pieces of our brain, the 4 quadrants that are at work, how do we use it to get through tough situations?
Well, I've been through tough situations. The losing everything, ending up homeless, not having a clue what to do, having no friends, having to move back to a town. Some people would say that's pretty bad. That's a problem. That's a big problem.
Right.
But what happens, and happened to me without me realizing it, is you have to get to a point of, instead of relying on your thinking brain and your survival brain to try and figure out what to do, you have to start trusting your creative brain. Now, your creative brain is not your thoughts. What to do is not in your thinking part of your brain. All the thinking part of your brain can do is try and figure out stuff based on your past experience.
Right.
So it's only got whatever information you've put in there. It's not going to be necessarily that helpful. But when you understand your creative brain is almost infinite in its power, and it's the one that does the job, you've got to get to a point through your understanding of saying, I'm just going to give up trying to control, give up trying to figure it out, and allow that. And part of it is, maybe even if you're in a bad situation, you can still be grateful for your life from a different perspective. Instead of, one thing I share with people, instead of saying, why is this happening to me, which we tend to when we're faced with a problem, why not say, why is this happening for me? Not to me, but for me.
Right.
That puts your brain in a different state automatically, and you can start to see, wow, maybe there's an opportunity here. Yes. Me losing everything was why I'm here talking to you. It's how I learned all of this stuff, and how I've been able to help other people through my coaching to change their life as well, like I did.
Yeah.
And so it was a great gift. So if you're struggling with a problem, it's only from your limited perspective. And this isn't trying to sound harsh, but it's the truth. It's only from your limited perspective, because you can't see the future. But maybe it's a gift you've been given to learn something, to prepare you for a greater life that's coming down the track. And it certainly is. But you've got to let go and stop trying to figure it out and trying to get all stressed because you don't think it's working. The best success manual on how to use your brain, the best operating manual on how to use your brain, is actually the Bible. Would you believe it? Because what does it say in the Bible? It tells us exactly how to use our brain. It says more than 360 times in the Bible, be not afraid, have no fear, have faith.
Right.
And it's just what I've been saying. Being afraid, it's not saying that because it doesn't say try not to be afraid, please. It says be not afraid. That's an instruction, because when you're afraid, you're finished, unless you're dealing with the lion coming at you. Your brain's the God-given gift of your brain to make sure you live the best life, you're throwing it away because you're using it the wrong way.
Right.
And it says, give no thought for tomorrow, have faith, believe, trust. You will, do not worry about what you will wear or what you will eat or drink. That's all going to be provided for you.
Right.
So you have to get to a place where you know that's true. And what I teach through understanding the brain is the proof that it's true. It's the proof that it works. So when you start trusting, you can't just hope and because all that's based on fear. I'd really like to believe this. You've got to get to a point where you say, I'm just going to let go. I'm just going to allow this part of my brain to take over. And then just act on what shows up. Take the next step. You don't need to know the 20th step of what to do. You can't, but you can know the next step. And without fear, just act on that.
Yeah.
And then see how your life unfolds.
And Liam, that's the tough one for a lot of people, not knowing what that next step is, right? Because they want to know, they want to be prepared, they want to know what's happening around the corner, they want to be able to respond or have that time to think about what the response should be, and to be able just to say, let it go, have faith. Some people be like, "What, are you kidding me? I can't do that," right? But I think it's a necessary step.
When you understand your brain, you start to think, why would I do anything else? It's the same with the car. If someone said to you, right, you get in the car and you take your foot off the brake and you release the handbrake and press the accelerator and go, and everything will be fine. You don't doubt it and say, I can't do that. I'm too afraid that I might go off a cliff or that it might damage it. No, you go, okay, I trust the machine. I understand the machine, so I trust it. Right. I know it's going to do its job. That's what it's there for.
Right.
Same with your brain. If you understand that there are these four parts and the creative part is supposed to work this way, then you go, well, of course I'll trust. Yeah, there's no trust involved, actually. It's just logical sense when you understand it.
Yeah, no, I listen. I love the way you've simplified it, and it was certainly you've laid it out in a manner that's really, really clear, and it's trusting what the brain, giving the brain a chance to do what it's meant to do, and trusting that it will do it properly and not let you down. And I think that's really, if I were to sort of simplify what you're getting at, that's really what I take away. Trust your brain. Trust your brain.
Yeah, understand how it works, and then you'll automatically trust it.
Yeah.
But trust is the key. Yeah.
I very much love too the conversation dialogue around fear. And the fact that, yeah, sure, it's there, but that doesn't mean we have to give into or yield to it. And also knowing that by being in a fearful state, it limits, it takes away every other opportunity for all the good stuff to happen, which I think is a really, really important point. So if people can move out of that fear state, not to say that they can't ever be afraid, but not to stay in that fear state, that will prevent all the other good stuff from happening, right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's the way your brain works. You're only supposed to be afraid of something that's about to eat you. You're not supposed to be afraid of, but here's the thing, and the third part, remember I said there are 3 steps, really. The first one is to understand the machine, how it works. The second one is to realize that fear is the enemy, and to eliminate as much as you can the toxicity of fear that you're bringing in. And the third thing, once you're doing that, is you've got to start getting rid of the fear that's already in there. Because what your brain is doing, it's been connecting certain things with danger to your survival. So all your life, you've been bringing in all these ideas, and people have been telling you things, and you've watched things that have said that could be dangerous. You know, losing your money could be a threat to your survival.
Sure.
Somebody getting a divorce, having a divorce might be a threat to your survival. This isn't what you think, but it's what your brain has been trained to think. And that's why you feel stress about it. So you have to find a way. And I've actually created a process called Neurostate Rebalancing, which is a way of getting your brain to start seeing the difference between something that you definitely should be afraid of, like there's a cliff there, you're about to fall off it, and some imaginary fear, like your husband or wife saying they want a divorce, or the stock market going down, or you losing your job, or any of these, or your business collapsing. Any of those things actually there is no basis for being afraid, because when you understand your creative brain, it's going to make everything right for you. Everything's going to work out fine, and you can trust that. And maybe this is just something that had to happen. Then you literally don't get afraid. You see, that's what happened to me when I lost everything. I was no longer afraid of losing everything, because my brain said, well, hang on, you've always been afraid, or I've always been afraid of losing everything. That would be a danger and a threat to your survival. But here you are, you've lost everything and you're still here.
Right.
So you don't need to be afraid of it anymore.
Right. I like very much, and oftentimes I use an analogy of, a boulder in our pathway as we're going along our journey, and there's a boulder there that's blocking our path. And I talk about the importance of finding a way to get on the other side of that, whether it's up, over, around, or through, underneath, whatever, but getting to the other side, which we'd use our creative brain to do, because on the other side is where the greatness lies, where the victory lies, where the accomplishments and all the other wonderful things that are intended for us, and not letting that situation keep us in that fear state, keeping with the conversation of brain, as you've talked about.
Yeah, I think our life is like being in a river, and we're supposed to we're supposed to go with the flow, the path of least resistance, because one of the things about nature is the less the resistance, the faster you go. When you ride a bicycle, if you ride into the wind, you're going to struggle more. But if you go with the wind, that's the way you go faster. Right. And when you go with the flow of your life, sometimes on the river you might encounter some rapids, but really there aren't any big boulders that show up, because your brain is going to navigate you through so that you don't encounter any boulders, because it doesn't want boulders in your life. It wants you to thrive. Right. It doesn't want to cause you any problems or stress. It doesn't want you to have that. That's not helping you or anybody having boulders in your life. So it will navigate your life in the perfect way, but you have to be able to let yourself be guided and directed by this part of your brain that's taking you in the right flow.
Yeah, it's that hard thing again. That's getting hard to let it guide me, man. But it very much is about letting go and letting go of control. And for those individuals who want to be able to, dictate every step and every pathway, everything that happens along their pathway, it is very much about letting go and letting, as you said, the river flow, isn't it?
Totally. And, wanting to control everything in your life, that's all based on fear. You're worried that if you're not in control, something might happen that you don't like. But again, it comes from a lack of understanding. It comes from a lack of understanding of how your brain is, how it works, and how it's so powerful, and how it works in this biological world we live in to ensure that you're going to have the best life possible. One of the things, just as an aside, we've got the stuff in our body called DNA,
yes,
which we've all heard of. But I don't think we really realize what DNA actually is. What it is, it's a strand of molecules that's in every cell of our body.
Okay.
And if you were to stretch it out, it's like in a long strand. If you were to stretch it out, it would be 4 feet long. That's how long the DNA is in one cell. And you've got 75 trillion cells. So if you were to stretch out all of the DNA, that's more than 50 million miles. That's further than from here to Mars, this stuff called DNA. And what DNA is, each of those strands holds 250 million pieces of information about you, and they're all unique. They're like a blueprint for your life.
Gotcha. And
all your brain is trying to do, its biological job, is to ensure that those 250 million pieces of information, that uniqueness of you, is expressed in the best possible way. So and that's what it's programmed, designed, trying to do, is make you the best of you, bring out the best in that. So trying to worry about what you should do, trying to compare yourself to other people, try to figure out what's going to happen in the next step. You don't need to do any of that. This machine is there to do that for you, like driving the car. You don't need to get out every 1 second and look at if the wheels are still turning.
Right.
Just let it do its job. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, well, it doesn't sound crazy. It's difficult to say. Or should I say, we're tempted to say, it's too difficult. It's very difficult to let go and allow things to happen but that only comes from a lack of understanding, because you'd only say that in a car if you didn't understand how it works. So this is why it's vital to understand how your brain works. And the beauty is, you only need a little taste of this. This is what happened to me. And then something happens unexpectedly, and you go, that's my creative brain at work. And I was busy trying to get something else to happen, but this was perfect. I'm glad what I wanted didn't happen. Yeah. And this person just showed up completely out of the blue with the answer to a problem I had.
Yeah.
You only need a little taste of that, and you go, I start to understand how it works, and now I can trust it. And you do more and more of that, and you get to the stage where you just trust it totally. And that's when you don't end up with problems.
Right.
I know it sounds bizarre. Life without problems, that's impossible. No, it's not. Just because everybody else has problems doesn't mean that it's the way you're designed to live.
Well, Liam, as well, and I agree with you. And I think a good point around this, and you said it earlier, is that when something happens, your question you ask isn't why is it happening to me? It's why it's happening for me. So even something that's presented as a problem, that creative side of your brain, you're able to take that and shape it and mold it into a fashion that works to our best interests.
Well, not only that, your creative brain is bringing that to you for a very specific purpose. One, to show you what you've been doing wrong. Mm-hmm. And secondly, as a gift. Every problem that you have, in hindsight, you will see as a gift. And there've been countless stories of well-known people. For instance, Steve Jobs, who created Apple Computer.
Yep.
He was fired from his own company, the one he'd spent decades building up, and he was fired. Right. And he said later, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it allowed me he went back to the company, but he could go and work on being super creative and then come back in a much more resourceful, powerful way and make the company far bigger than it would have been if he'd stayed there.
Right.
And everybody, if you ask people, Oprah Winfrey was saying, about her childhood, how terrible it was, but it enabled her to have compassion and also gave her a drive for success, so to help other people not be in that situation.
Yeah.
And my own situation, losing everything, sounds terrible, but it was a great gift. I couldn't see it at the time. So this is all our creative brain at work, bringing us the things we need, the lessons we need to learn, to finally say, well, can you please just get out of the way and let me run your life and give you a great life? That's what I'm here to do.
whether we realize or not, it's happening, and I think the key is, again, it's kind of getting out of the way and relinquishing control, and if that means that we become fearless in order to do that, then that's what we have to do. And I think it's I love it. I think it's fantastic, actually. So it's getting me thinking as well. Like, were times when I wasn't relinquishing control? Were there moments when I didn't allow things to happen because I was in another state, another fear state? So that's important. I wonder how so we talked a lot about the fear, survival state of our brain and the creative. How does the thinking and feeling play in this? Or how do they work? Are they just individually doing their job, or where do they come into all this?
Well, the thinking part of your brain is like as I said earlier, a library, a database of your past experience. And you obviously, we draw on our past experience to help us make sense of our environment.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you see a banana on a tree. When you see it again, you know it's a banana. I mean, because that information is stored in your brain.
Right.
So it is very useful. It's also the part of our brain, excuse me, that enables us to communicate and understand other people. So that's how the thinking brain works. The emotional brain is actually, I talk about this more in my coaching program, because there's quite a bit more to understand about the emotional brain. But basically, the main job of your emotional brain, it's the gatekeeper, it's the watchman, it's the one that decides whether something is safe or dangerous. So it literally takes the information from your thinking brain in every second, and it makes a decision. Does this mean, is there a lion coming, or is the sun rising? You know, is it safe or dangerous? And however it interprets it, it sends chemicals, it releases chemicals all the time as either a warning that it's danger or a sign, carry on and be happy. So it either makes you feel good and happy, and you know your emotions are good, or you feel stressed, worried and afraid. But that's the one which really decides whether you're in creative state or you're in your survival state. Is managed by your emotional brain.
Right. So everything is working in hand with one another and supporting each other, while they're at the same time still doing their individual jobs. It's
absolutely the most perfect system in the universe for the most perfectly balanced, beautifully integrated machine. We're so lucky we've been given this. It's incredible.
Wow. No, I really appreciated hearing you to talk about that and breaking it all down. So thank you for that. Now, so you've done a lot. You've got coaching programs. You've written about. You've got a book on this as well. Sort of talk about that aspect of your work, because this isn't just this is your life's mission, I would say. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think this stuff should be taught in schools. You know, kids should be taught. Okay, well, we're going to have a lesson in how your brain works to create your ideal life. And it's not that complicated, is it, really, the way I've described it?
No.
Be a different world. So, yes, my mission, after having been through the struggle path without understanding who I am, what this machine actually is, and how to make it work, it's my mission to help other people. So on my website, which is just my name, liamnaden.com, I actually have my own podcast, and I go into a lot of detail about how your brain works, and you know, explained it a lot more than I've been able to here. But so there's my podcast. There's also, I have a coaching program where I teach people this process called Neurostate Rebalancing, which is what that does is that gets, I mentioned it before, I think, where it gets your brain to separate out real danger from real immediate danger from imaginary danger. It's a way of rebalancing your brain, if you like. So that's what I do. I also do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching, because that actually was an area where I figured a lot of the stuff out, because people would come to me and they still do, asking for help to save their marriage. That's my main focus. And some people did and some people didn't. And I thought, what's the difference? It wasn't the information, because I have coaching programs that are very, very effective, but they work for some people and other people don't get the same result. So it wasn't about the information. It wasn't about their motivation. People were desperate. They would do anything. They are. And it wasn't about the amount of prayer or whatever they did. And what I realized it was, and that's how I really branched out into this whole area of the brain, into a wider area, it's because this is affecting people and how they solve any problem in their life. The difference between people who succeeded in healing their marriage and those who didn't was just about how they were using their brain.
That's funny. I was in a conversation with someone very recently, and they were talking about their sort of marriage challenges, and their marriage was at the brink. It was at that point where it's like, it could go either way, and they talked about reconnecting again, becoming friends again, and really wanting to have that relationship succeed. And I guess what's triggered my thinking is that if you're not really committed to the success, then how can you expect it not to fail?
Well, part of the problem is people are too committed to the success because they're afraid, and they say things, maybe in your friend's situation, I will do anything to save my marriage. I will do anything to reconnect it. But they've got a spouse who's saying the opposite, that they don't want to be with them. And by you sending the message to your spouse, if so this is a mini version of one of the things I teach with in relationships. But if your husband or your wife comes to you and says that they want a divorce and they're not happy, and you say, I'll do anything to keep you and I'm going to fight for our marriage, all they're hearing is you don't give a toss about me. You're not respecting me. You're just saying what you want. And everything that you do, you're only doing it to try and change my mind.
Right.
Because that person is all based on fear, because the only outcome they can see for them to be happy is if they heal their marriage, because they're afraid of any other option. So then that's why they do all the wrong things, because it's based on fear. Whereas their brain in a creative state would be saying, if your husband or your wife comes and wants a divorce, listen to them, be empathetic, try to understand them, try and make them feel good and respected and for their decision, and whatever they want to do, that's fine by you.
Right.
They're going to like you. You've got more chance of saving that marriage. They're going to like you a lot better if you make them feel good than if you're trying to change their mind.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It's another mini list. Yeah, but most people don't do that because their brain won't allow them to do it, because their brain is in a stressed, fearful state. They're worried about what they think the end of their marriage might mean. So they do all the wrong things, not because they want to, but because their brain won't let them. Their brain is just, so their brain says, change their mind, get them to counseling, sit down and talk to them about all your problems, tell them how committed you are. They're all the wrong things to do to somebody who's saying they want out.
Right. And oftentimes those are sort of natural reactions, knee-jerk reactions that happen right away. And once you start down that path,
that's your fear brain at work. That instant reaction thing. That's what it is.
Yep.
Just makes it worse.
Liam, listen, this has been really, really awesome. First and foremost, I really appreciate this, the insights and really the exploring the power of our brain, the brain power of our brain specifically, because it clearly has far greater impacts and reach than we realize. And so thank you for this. This has been awesome. You said your website is liamnaden.com, and that's for our listeners who want to connect with you or learn more about your work. So we can certainly send them there. Again, when we think of the foundation of this podcast, and it's really on the strength of being bold and audacious and taking risks, all of those things, it can happen with our creative brain. All of those things can happen, but we've got to be in the right state for that to happen.
And when you are in that right state, it's not scary, it's exciting. And that's what life's supposed to be. We're here for an adventure, not for some struggle, trial, horrible experience. And when you're in your creative brain, everything that happens is an adventure. Now, of course, you might feel fear with the odd thing when you need to, but
sure,
you're not worried about the future. You're not worried about making mistakes. You're just doing, and you're far more productive, resourceful, and happy when you're like that than when your brain is in this fear state, which is when you're overloading it with something it's not designed to do. Right.
Yeah. Amazing. Liam, thank you for this. This has been fantastic. And congratulations on the work, and keep it going, my friend. This is really great stuff you're doing.
Thank you. And it's been great talking to you. Thanks a lot.
All right. Be well.
You too.
Back we are here on the podcast, and really got to send my thanks and appreciation to Liam for being here and really, again, providing some outstanding insights into the power of our brain and how important it is for us to stay in that creative state for that peak performance. I think your personal stories and experiences feed in nicely and really lend itself to your work. And congratulations. Be sure to follow Liam and over at liamnaden.com. That's his website as well. You can also check out his podcast. He's a fellow podcaster, so I got to give him some love as well. You know, when I think back to my conversation with Liam, it really left us with a lot of great points. But if there's just one thing that I would take from my chat with him, it would be this. Research tells us that the human brain is broken down into different parts, with each having its own specific function or task. For example, there's a creative side that's responsible for generating new ideas and insights, whereas the problem-solving side of our brain tends to focus on solving complicated tasks and coming up with answers to them. Now, maybe you've noticed yourself, but sometimes our best ideas will come when we're in the shower, maybe when we're listening to music or taking a walk. It's because during these activities, we don't need to focus on figuring out problems. We can relax and turn off that part of our brain, and their creativity will just naturally flow. The key for us is to find ways to spend as much time as possible in that creative space, figuring out what you're best at, switching up your routine, embracing other perspectives, and resisting any form of procrastination are some of the things that you can do to tap into your natural creative ability. These things, combined with the courage to take action and the stamina to keep it going, will help you get on the audacious path of creativity. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com, enter in your email address, and you'll be alerted every time we've got brand new content that comes out. We've reached the end of another episode of the podcast, and I always want to send my thanks and appreciation to our lovers of audaciousness and our amazing listeners. I appreciate you for your ongoing support. If you are checking out the platform or you're checking out the podcast rather on your favorite podcasting listening platform, I'd encourage you to give us a rating, leave a comment. It would be so much appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.